Cool. I think we're live now. So yeah, hello to everybody who's watching at home on Facebook or YouTube, and hello to all of the RNCMers as well who are joining us. And yeah, of course, a very big welcome to Alisa Weilerstein, who's joining us on this Insights live stream. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure is not very many of you, Alisa is one of the leading cellists of our generation, and she's known for her emotionally invested playing and interpretive depth. Her artistry was recognised with a MacArthur Genius Grant Fellowship in 2011, and a quote from the Los Angeles Times summarises her playing in a really nice way, I think. They just said, "She doesn't give the impression that making music involves any will at all. She and the cello simply just seem to be one and the same." Her career is completely global, and she performs solo recitals, new music commissions, chamber concerts and concertos really regularly in the most prestigious concert halls worldwide. You might have caught her locally when she was in Manchester in pre-COVID times, when she performed the complete Bach cello suites at the Bridgewater Hall. But now we're a lot further apart than that. She's joining us from San Diego, where it's currently about half 9 in the morning. So yeah, thank you for being with us so early. And yeah, how are you? How have the past months, weeks been for you in this strange time?
Well, a bit better now. I think that we're kind of turning the corner, and at least in some parts of the world, and the parts of the world that we are frequenting most often. And so the summer actually looks pretty bright, comparatively
Oh,
speaking, to how things have been. Uh, I'm sure this is true for all of you. It's been a real, it's been a very trying time in many
mm,
ways. It's also the silver linings for me personally have been more time with my family, more time just to kind of more time kind of without deadlines, uh, and also more time to kind of reflect on new projects and what and thinking about how we can come out of this time. And we say never waste a good crisis. So it's
I haven't
time
heard
for
that.
kind of thinking differently, and just figuring out really what the priorities are moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, so it wasn't so much of a shock then to go from like a very busy schedule to nothing. Did it feel like,
It was a total shock. It was
oh,
yeah, totally. I think we all went through the sort of 5 stages of grief,
oh
let's
yeah.
say. So, those first weeks when you just felt the world collapsing,
Mm,
it was definitely, it was difficult, of course, and as I'm sure it was for all of you guys in different ways. But you realize what you're grateful for. I mean, thank God, we were all healthy. We didn't
oh,
get
yeah.
the virus. And my daughter is she just turned 5, so we're still the center of her world. So she was very happy to be with us. It wasn't
Oh,
she wasn't resenting it that she had to be stuck with us. So she was very happy, actually, and and now she's able to go back to school. So this is very good too. So
yeah.
I'm trying to count my blessings, as it were.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there are so many good things that have come from this as well. And I think actually, yeah, as you say, like it's been a real opportunity to be more creative because we've had that
Yeah,
time to like we've our,
absolutely.
our brains have had a time to like wander and not
Yeah.
be not be so one thing to the next.
Mhm.
Because obviously in usual times you're super busy flying off to all
It's
corners
very,
of the
yeah,
world.
I mean, and that's the life that I really know, and that's my rhythm. And I'm a very kind of restless person anyway. And so I'm always kind of going from one thing to the next. And it's constant travel, and you know,
Mm. Yeah.
that's the life that I've certainly known for a very, very long time. And
Yeah.
so being forced to sit and to uh, just completely change
Mm.
the pace. I'm sure it was the same for all of you, and in your own kind of personal ways. Um, that was definitely a real shock, and a
Mm.
difficult shock,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. But yeah, if you can, I mean, obviously you can remember pre-COVID times when you did have such a busy life. Did you find that ever that creativity that comes with having like more of a calm mind, did you ever find that that was, I don't know, like more difficult, or did you find it really
Sure.
stimulating to turn that pressure into creativity?
Oh yes. Well, I mean, I think I feel most stimulated, and I thrive on chaos a little bit, and so
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
and 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 so it was definitely more of an adjustment to have to not have, to not have, have to move like that all the time. But we were just all forced to shift our own rhythms, really. And so, it took a while for sure. I mean, I remember listening to an interview with uh the wonderful conductor Alan Gilbert was doing interviews with his colleagues. So there was one with Esa-Pekka Salonen and Simon Rattle and Karina Kanalakis, and they were all talking about this. And this was early days. Well, we didn't think it was early days at the time, but it did turn out to be early days. It was like last May, and they said, well, we'll come out of this soon, but right now I feel kind of, they said, well, I'm resting and I don't have anywhere to travel to, but I feel paralyzed.
Mm, mm.
They're sort of listening to the news and okay, what do I and I thought that was very powerful because at the time, that's exactly what I was feeling. Feeling sort of a sense of paralysis and kind of like, oh, okay, deer in headlights type of thing. But I was still in those early days. I had a very strong instinct to just give whatever I could, and so I started this 36 days of Bach projects, like on March 17th, which is March 13th, everything stopped. So March 17th, I started, and I would post movement of Bach. I went through all the suites, from the prelude of the first suite to the jig of the last, over 36 days.
Mm.
And so that I just wanted to share and to give, because this is what we
Yeah.
do. I mean, we are communicators. And so that was very important for me to do that. And it was, and it was great to connect with those
Oh,
online audiences.
yeah. And I think that's something that everyone is so drawn to about your playing, is the way that you communicate in such a, I don't know, I guess like an uninhibited way, almost like it's very you're very fearless on stage, I would say. And I've always been intrigued, is that fearlessness something that comes very naturally to you, or is it something that you've had to, I don't know, practice and work at?
mm, I think it's not, the fearlessness is not what I've practiced, but I've had to practice accepting the fact that uh, being on stage is uncomfortable.
Mm, mm,
And so it's a kind of radical acceptance of that fact, that there's I mean, I love being on stage, don't get me wrong. I feel, and in a way I feel very at home on stage, but there's also something very uncomfortable and
mm,
unsettling about the fact that anything can happen on stage.
mm.
And so learning to kind of love that fact rather than being afraid of it is something that, it's a constant um, process, I'd
Yeah,
say.
I guess it's like extreme vulnerability, isn't it? That you're just.
Extreme vulnerability, yes. I mean, there. Yeah, I heard another quote which I really liked. I think it was Barenboim who said, um, "Yeah, being a performing artist takes ridiculous confidence and ridiculous humility
Yeah, yeah,
at the
yeah,
same time." It's a very very strange combination of the two.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
extreme confidence and extreme humility.
Yeah. Oh, that's really
Same time.
lovely. And yeah, would you have any advice for people who maybe struggle more with that fear of being, yeah, that vulnerable on stage, or have a fear of, I don't know,
Yeah.
anything really.
Well, it's about acceptance, isn't it? I mean,
Mm,
kind of owning those feelings and learning to
mm,
not run away from them. This is what has always helped me to realize. I mean, not to try to shove it under the rug and I say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. Of course, I'm prepared. There's no reason for me to fear being on stage." It's that may be true, but that doesn't necessarily help the nerves, which are not rational.
Yeah.
They're purely emotional.
Mm.
And so learning to kind of accept those emotions when
Mm.
you're on stage is something that's really important, and it takes time. And
Yeah.
so it can't really be forced, but it's something that, they say the first step is awareness, being,
Yeah.
being aware of those feelings, and being aware that to really love performing, and therefore to be successful at performing, you have to own that and accept it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That would be
Um,
that would be my advice.
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one of those things that it's easy to put in words and harder to put
It's
in
very hard to do.
practice.
I'm not saying it's easy, but it's just, I mean, I think having that mentality of, you know, it's a sort of a self-love and a self-belief.
Mm, mm,
Um, and you know, uh, and just allowing yourself that space
mm.
to feel what you're going to feel, as long as you can accept it, and then you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. You obviously have like a very deep love of cello and of
Yeah,
performing and
yeah,
of music.
yeah.
And you can hear that and see that. But is there anything, I don't know, anything that makes you sad or angry about the music world? Is
Oh,
there?
lots of things. Lots of things. Yes, of course. Ah, well,
If
sorry,
you
is
could,
that my, that can't be, no, it's not my kid. Sorry, that there was a message. It was like, my kid's in school. They said, she's not making noise. Sorry. Uh, well, I think one thing that we really need to work on, and which finally I think people are working on, is inequity in our field. I mean, it's inequity in the world, of course, but I mean, it's very, very much true of the classical music field, that um, it's seen as a very elitist institution, not a terribly diverse one. In fact, not a diverse one at all. And it's something that we all really need to embrace and really work at. Uh, I think, um, you know, and I was reading some UK press actually about music programs getting cut from schools. It's the same. It's the same issue in the US, and we always have to fight like hell for it, to make sure that music is part of every child's education. Because I mean, look, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. We all know that music education is extremely important, but it's not just important for musical development. It's also very important for social development. And you know, I saw the clearest example of that in Venezuela when I went. I first went in 2009. I met my husband there, and I went to Venezuela, I think, 40 times. Um, and played with El Sistema orchestras. I also coached a lot of of kids, cello lessons, as well as kind of sections. And I also heard a lot of orchestras, not only in the big cities but also in the small towns. And you could there was one experience in particular that moved me incredibly, which was, we were in a really, really small town, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and there was literally a one room schoolhouse with a group of about 40 kids between the ages of 8 and 12. And you know, their teacher, kind of conductor, uh, you know, ran them through a piece, and they played really beautifully, and they were very proud of themselves. Um, and so I complimented the teacher afterwards, and she said, well, yeah, they play well now, but you should have seen them when they came to me a year ago. I couldn't get them to share a single microphone. They would whack each other on the head with it. And it was, you know, and the act of, I mean, it was painstaking work, of course, that she did. Obviously, she was an amazing teacher, but getting them to play together, to create sound together, to produce this beautiful sound together, this kind of collective act, it completely changed their thinking, their personalities, and made them into, you know, it socialized them essentially, which was really, really powerful. Obviously this sounds sort of Pollyanna-ish and simplistic, but it just shows, though, that this is a really powerful thing that that music training can do and can help to do. And so that's one thing. I mean, when I see that music and the arts in general are kind of devalued, which drives me crazy, obviously. The other thing which I think we really need to work at is the acceptance of contemporary music into not just as kind of a throwaway on orchestral programs. I mean, sometimes you'll see orchestral programs like, okay, obligatory 5-minute long new piece followed by, you know, Brahms concerto followed by a Tchaikovsky symphony. It's all great music. Brahms and Tchaikovsky are two of my favorite composers, but it's kind of just ticking boxes, let's say. And I would prefer to see it, you know, the embrace of contemporary music the way we embrace contemporary visual art.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
so,
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
yeah. So it's these kinds of things which I've been thinking about a lot about during this time. I mean, I've always been thinking about them, but you know, since we have more time to think now, I'm thinking about going forward how I can use my platform such as it is to really further these ideas.
Yeah, I guess that's something so nice though, isn't it? About, I guess every one of us has quite a lot of power over the music that we
Yep.
decide to learn, and
Yep.
so you know, individually we can take a lot of responsibility for learning pieces
For
by
sure.
composers
For
and
sure.
music and
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure obviously things are different now. I mean, you guys are a lot younger than I am, but new music was not part of my curriculum at all, really. I mean, I had to seek it out myself. And I would love to see it be part of just, I mean, like the way you learn the Dvorak concerto, that you will also have to learn something that's written by a living composer.
yeah.
And you also can research the kind of new music that really speaks to you, because now, I mean, there's so many, but basically it's acceptable now to write in any sort of language, any sort of style. Whereas let's say in the 1960s or something, it was, you know, it was only acceptable if you wrote in a very sort of serial way. You were only taken seriously if you wrote in that way. But now it's really, it's kind of a free for all, which makes it in some ways much easier to find what you like. In other ways, it can be kind of overwhelming to sort through it all. But I think we all have to do it. And so it's your generation that also needs to step up and do that and take, you know, take ownership of that part of your education.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it can feel, I don't know, it can feel in conservatoires that, you know, you have to learn this in this piece and you have to.
And you do have to. You do
Yeah,
have to.
yeah,
That's not
of
to
course.
take away. You have to learn it, and you have to learn the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
You have to learn all the standard repertoire, of course. I mean, there's, you know, there's a reason why this is our bread and butter. These are masterpieces written by geniuses, and there's nothing to take away from that. So that's another thing which I think is also very dangerous, is that we swing the pendulum too far the other way, and we dismiss the great music that we're learning now because they're written by dead white males, and that's, you know, that's also unfair. These are great genius works which are part of our canon, which need to be part of our education and need to also be part of our programming, but we have to find the right balance, you know.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Balance is exactly the right word, isn't it?
Yes.
Balance. Yeah, balance in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that leads on really nicely to another question. Because yeah, I don't. Yeah, funny we were talking about conservatoires, but I don't know if you found this when, I know you studied kind of at university as well.
Yeah, I
as
did. Yeah.
So maybe you don't have this experience, but
Sure.
I think conservatoires can often feel, I don't know, like quite like a closed bubble. Like, and the classical music world can generally feel like a bit of a closed bubble that's maybe not as engaged with the rest of the world. And I don't know, is there anything that helps you to like keep that perspective, that kind of life perspective, and inject your playing with that life?
That was precisely why I wanted to have the university education as well, because there is that danger. However, you know, you have much more at your fingertips than we did when I was in school. Also, I mean, even with the internet, with everything around, you have access to an unprecedented wealth of information at your fingertips. So that helps. But yeah, I would. I mean, when it's safe to travel again, definitely try to take advantage of that. Hear as many concerts as you can by as a kind of diverse group of artists as you can find, which of course in the UK you have. I would also try to make friends with people in different fields than you. That was one thing that really attracted me to Columbia University, was that there's so many people were doing different things, and you know, of course, in your own bubble, it's very hard to find people who are not musicians, but you can, Manchester's a big city. You can, there are people to find who are not in your field. Perhaps most importantly, just read. Read everything you can get your hands on. I mean, this was really, this was such a huge part of my university, well, let's say conservatoire and university experience, was that finding the time to read and to find diverse topics to read about is really, really important.
Yeah.
For perspective and yeah, just for being a well-rounded human being.
Oh yeah. Do you think there's a book that springs to mind that's like particularly altered your, I don't know, your worldview?
No, there wasn't one in particular. I wouldn't say, but it depends on what you're interested in.
I mean,
sorry.
I mean, I guess, I don't know, anything that's changed your philosophy in terms of like your playing, or I guess because we're doing a music Q&A.
Yeah, of course. I wouldn't say that there was something that changed my playing directly. I mean, I didn't read the book and have an aha moment type of thing, but it's just, it's something that you do your whole life. And there are, your education doesn't end here. You're going to be discovering new things your whole life. And so I think being open to different perspectives and seeking out different literature and different nonfiction books is something that is going to really help you be a more well-rounded human being.
Yeah.
So I don't want to point you at, oh, you have to get this book. It's, this is, it's very personal.
Oh yeah, of course.
I will tell you, this is a very popular book, but I recently read *Sapiens*, which I thought was just, I mean, it's sorry.
Oh, I love that book. I've read that too.
Yeah, I love it too. It's definitely it's a personal narrative also, which is something which is a caveat, of course. So I mean, you can read it, and you can read it with some degree of skepticism, but there are books like that which are really, really thought-provoking and can kind of change your perspective. So
yeah. And are there any other things apart from books that you kind of look to for creative inspiration, like any specific
theater, visual art, great conversations with interesting people. I mean, it's there's a wealth of information, even while things have been closed. There's still so much to see, that it's so much that you can seek out, even on the internet. And then as things open up, please go to the theater and go to museums and everything else. It's incredibly important to have those experiences. It's as important as practicing, as long as you practice.
Yeah. What do you think there's an art of finding that balance of maybe what you think that balance is, of obviously having enough time in the day to do your work and to practice, and then also to live a life? It can be a balance that's so hard to find.
Absolutely. I mean, do you ever write your schedule down?
Oh yes, I try. I try.
It's helpful. I mean, I was kind of a compulsive scheduler, especially when I was at university. I would write down to kind of to the minute what I was going to practice. And I also think it's important. I hope I'm not going to get in trouble with your teachers, but let's say between 3 and 4 hours of very focused practice is much more useful than 8 hours of unfocused practice. So, you say, yay, I practiced all day, but if you're kind of not, oh, thanks for the thumbs up.
Thank you for saying that.
And, it's, you say, yay, I practiced all day, but for what? Three, let's say if you can take your morning, I mean, I don't know, everyone's schedule is different. I sometimes felt I was most productive in the morning in terms of practicing, even though I'm actually kind of a night person, which is kind of ironic, but anyhow, I was always most productive in the morning, say between 3 and 4 hours, then you're done by 1 or 2 o'clock, and then you've got the rest of the day to do other things.
Yeah.
And you've had a very focused time, and as you've had a productive time on your instrument. And so I mean, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of this toxic productivity and working for work's sake. And I don't think it's kind of a false
something else. And I might get in trouble now, but I learned this actually from my father, who's a great violinist, and also one of the great pedagogues of string playing. He always told me that I should take one complete day off from the instrument per week. So I would practice 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I actually found that I would be more productive during those other days, because I would kind of look forward to the day off from practicing as well. And I wanted to kind of earn that. And and it just made me a much better practicer, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's possible, and to try to arrange that day off when you don't have an orchestra rehearsal or chamber music rehearsal or something, that you just have one complete free day from the instruments, then this is when you can really do other things, either rest or go to the museums, go to the go and seek out take on the world that way. So
I think, and that it leaves you with so much more energy for the instrument as well.
And there's also there's a reason why we sleep at night, right? So that we we have to digest all the information that we've taken in, and having that day off on the instrument helps you do that. It's kind of like a it's time for regeneration, and you come and you come at the instrument with a fresh perspective the following day.
So I guess you're not a believer in this suffer for your art kind of thing, do you think? Or do you think the element of truth?
Well, I think you still can suffer for your art. That's still a lot of work. I don't believe in killing yourself for 10 hours a day and making yourself worse on the instrument and maybe hurting yourself physically. So no, that I don't subscribe to. But there's still, you're still gonna have plenty of blood, sweat, and tears on your hands if you practice 4 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yes,
that's a lot. And it's a lot of thought that goes into that. And to have 4 productive hours is sometimes much more energy consuming, rather than time consuming, energy consuming than 8 hours a day if you've got the TV on in the background and kind of that's no good to anybody, least of all you.
Let's jump topics a little bit and talk more about new music, because you've commissioned so many important new works and collaborated with a lot of very prominent composers who are alive today. What do you find stimulating and exciting about working with these people?
Well, it's, as I was saying earlier, it's so interesting now, because everyone that I've worked with is really such a unique voice, and they also write in their own languages, and they're equally great in their own ways. I mean, there's just so much variety, and which kind of defies categorization. And so that's one thing. The other really great thing is that several of these composers that I've worked with have become really good friends. And so it just gains there's just another kind of dimension um, in working with sort of kindred spirits, you know, if you like. It's also interesting to see how involved they want their performers in their work, and and it always varies from composer to composer. So, like for example, Osvaldo Golihov really wanted me involved with um, lots, you know, lots of kind of technical aspects of the instrument, and I got the score maybe 36 hours before the premiere, final version. So that was it was kind of nerve wracking and very very exciting and kind of thrilling in a way. Um, there was another composer who sent me the finished product a year before the premiere, so I had plenty of time, and every single note had a marking on it. It was extremely specific, and it was good that I could ask him kind of what some of these dashes and accents I actually meant, and some of the articulations. But we kind of polar opposite. Osvaldo, it was kind of a free for all. I could do essentially what I liked. With um, with Matthias Pincher and Lara Auerbach, extremely specific, and with Lara, in fact, we played a lot of cello and piano duo stuff of hers. I mean, these 24 preludes that she wrote for cello and piano. I mean, they're fantastic, and we had very intensive rehearsals, and she was maybe the most specific in terms of exactly what she wanted. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of been everywhere else in between with very interesting personalities and interesting artists.
Yeah, I guess that's what's one of the lovely things about music is we get to work so closely with people with all of these different characteristics.
Absolutely. And it also it gives you perspective and when you're learning old music. In terms of it humanizes the composer. I mean, you think these were not gods, these were human beings.
Are there any qualities that you specifically like particularly admire in certain musicians or in people generally, qualities that you think are I don't know, take them far or are particularly admirable?
I think, I mean, in a very general sense, people who can marry the head and the heart are always the most interesting to me. It's I think it's actually a very rare quality, and it's something I'm always trying to figure out, that balance and to balance the intellectual and the emotional, to combine them. And it's yeah, I always kind of gravitate toward those composers that I feel are. I don't think actually anyone is entirely successful at that, but I look for that when I'm looking for new music.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that balance is. I guess that's about what we do, isn't it?
It's the ever elusive balance, right? The intellectual and emotional.
Do you have any when you're searching for that? What do you? I know that's really interesting. Are there any things that you that you're aware of when you feel like the balance is off, or you think that?
Usually, I need to walk away if I'm practicing and I find the balance is off. I need to put the cello down and take a walk and just try to clean my brain.
Yeah.
As it were, or exercise or do something else for a while and then come back, because forcing the issue also is I find for me anyway, is almost always very unproductive.
Yeah. And what do you think the I don't know, what are the extremes that it swings between when you're, I don't know if someone's playing with like all head or when someone's playing with all heart? What do you think those extremes can sound like and can look like?
Well, it can either be somebody not, let's say in the case of one extreme, somebody not paying attention to structural aspects of the piece, somebody not following the dynamics, somebody not really understanding the why behind some of the markings in the score, or on the other side, somebody taking them extremely literally and then just sounding very stiff as a result.
Yes. Yeah.
kind of paralyzed.
Mm.
I actually find that extreme much more often than the other one,
Yes. Yeah.
to be honest with you. Um, and that's when it's helpful to kind of, take a step back
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and try to get the perspective of, okay, are you kind of going on a really micro level, which is not really helpful,
Mm.
or if you're going on such a macro level that you're not really understanding what the you know what the
Mm.
purpose is, what the why is. You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
I guess again, it's a question of the balance of like the empathy that you have for like the composer's intentions, but also like maintaining some of your own personal feelings, and not.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's I mean, we were talking about the head and the heart, but let's say being subjective and objective at the same time.
Mm.
That sometimes it's helpful to imagine yourself being in the audience and listening to yourself from a perspective, and so you can kind of somebody once said it well, like listening back to yourself, let's say. So you can you have to imagine how what you're producing is actually being experienced by somebody else,
Mm.
and that's a very important aspect of performing that you can practice. And so sometimes recording yourself from a distance is helpful. um, and very often I still do it, especially when I'm especially with Bach. Actually, I find very helpful to kind of record myself and see what's coming across. Sometimes it's completely different than what you imagine, and so sometimes you feel like you're putting everything into it, and then what comes out is actually sort of dry and very objective, and
Mm.
and sometimes it's the opposite way around. Like you feel like you're really following everything, but then it just comes out sounding like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so it's helpful to record yourself and to see how it's actually coming across. And so like what you hear in your mind is actually what's coming across through the instrument.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So much. Yeah. These dualities that we constantly
Yeah.
feel
Oh, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
all in every, in so many senses, so many dualities, and
Yeah.
finding that balance. Yeah. I guess that's what makes it a lifelong practice, is all of these different
That's
these
right. That's
balances
right.
that we
That's why I said your education doesn't end here. It doesn't end
yeah,
when you graduate.
yeah.
It's lifelong.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think I can invite some
Yeah.
questions from other people if you want to start
Sure.
asking in the chat and stuff. But is there a piece of advice that you'd I don't know, maybe give any music student or any student full stop?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the things you've been talking about, I think those are things that have really helped me um, throughout my own education, which is ongoing. Uh, yeah, just try to listen to as many different types of artists as you can. I think it's really really important, and for perspective, and not just. I mean, are you guys all cellists?
Oh, I'm not sure actually. In
No.
the
Okay. I see one who's not. But let's say okay. Um, Listen to those who don't play your instrument, and to music that you would not necessarily gravitate towards. It's I actually found sometimes that some of the most interesting comments were very often from, in my case, not from non-cellists. So that were, I mean, it just maybe because they couldn't necessarily tell me technically how to do something, they would just tell me what they wanted to hear, and then I would have to figure it out how to produce it.
yeah, yeah.
And that really helped me kind of progress into another level, I'd say,
Mm.
and to listen
Yeah.
in a different way.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, our first question, I think is from Chris. If Chris wants to ask a question.
Hi again, Alisa.
Hey.
I'm wondering if you could share with us how you approach a new work. And in this instance, I'm not really thinking of a contemporary piece, but let's say there's a piece from the classical period which you haven't played before. If you could tell us what would be your first steps in learning that new piece.
I would probably listen to a couple of different recordings from different artists, and look at the score kind of away from the instrument. at first, just to kind of get a very macro overview of the piece. Then I would kind of the next step would be I would kind of read it through on the cello, even if there were certain things which you can't really, I couldn't really get through without actually going in detail, practicing in detail, but just kind of playing through, like reading through it, I should say, just cold, after listening to a recording and looking at the score a bit, I find very helpful. And then you kind of go in from the macro level into actually working it out, and working out the details, working out the passage work and things like that. And the other thing, which I'm always very aware of and always preach, is to never divorce the music from the technique. So even when you're in the very, very first stages, that you're still, you're trying to work out fingerings and bowings and things like that, you're always thinking about how you're going to phrase this, and where this falls in the line, and so that when you finally do actually piece the whole thing together, that you've also learned it musically rather than just instrumentally. And so that's really important. Otherwise, sometimes, very often I hear people who talk about nerves and say, well, in the practice room it works fine. But yes, but you're practicing something very different than what you're actually going to perform, because you've practiced only for the instrument, but not for the actual music. So thinking of technique as a means to an end is very helpful.
Well, thanks for that. And when you were talking about learning it away from the instrument, are you at that stage imagining fingerings and bowings as well as the interpretation?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question. Can you say that again?
Yes, sorry, there's a grade 2 cello lesson going on in the background here. When you were talking about learning the piece away from the instrument, at that stage, are you imagining fingerings and bowings?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And interpretation and
yeah. You try to imagine everything, and so that's what you can go through really step by step. You can go through very slowly, but you can also you can imagine how things are actually going to be translated on the instrument. And because you have to kind of think of the phrasing first, and then how would the bowings work out so that you can actually show the phrase the way the way it's the way you want it to be. And so it all goes together.
It's great. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
I can see there's a question in the chat there, so I'll back up now.
Yeah, there's a question from Leda, which I'll just read out. She says, I saw recently a beautiful performance of yours with Daniel Barenboim and the Berlin Phil of the Elgar Cello Concerto, before she knew of this Q&A. And she asks, do you have any particular memory of that moment that you would like to share? And what is your relationship with the Elgar Concerto, which is usually so special for cello players?
Oh, I mean, the entire concert is an extremely special memory. Yeah, I mean, I first learned the Elgar Concerto when I was 12, but I would say, my obsession with Jacqueline Dupre came well before that, and so I listened to her recording, both of her recordings, with Barbaroli and with Barenboim, like every day for a very long period of time. And then when I started to learn the concerto, I realized I needed to break up with those recordings. Otherwise I was going to start, imitating her inadvertently. So I remember the experience of putting them on the shelf and saying, I have to say goodbye to you now. I'm really sorry. So that I could develop my own relationship with the score. But no, I mean, the Elgar is, it's one of the great masterpieces, and we're so lucky to have it. And actually, I just played it in Prague. It was one of the COVID performance, and this was in March when Czech Republic was #1 in COVID cases. So I mean, I did 5 days hard quarantine, and I wasn't allowed to leave the room when I arrived, and then went on stage and we did a live stream. And I found myself actually getting really emotional, and I thought, well, okay, it's been a while since I played Elgar because of the situation, but this is, and then I realized why. I mean, It was written in 1918, right of course, right after the First World War, and at the beginning of the Spanish flu pandemic. And so I thought, wow, this is really on the nose right now, because it was not a good moment in Europe. Things were getting slightly better in the UK and the US at that point, but not much. And it was kind of a dark period. And so playing that was my most recent performance of the Elgar, and that was extremely powerful for me.
Oh, and yeah, we have another question from Audrey. Audrey, would you like to speak your question, or?
I'll just put it in the chat, but I can read it out if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
I was wondering if you value both highly scheduled practice where you know exactly what you want to achieve, and as well as more explorative practice where you're not quite sure where you'll end up, or is one more useful to you than the other?
I value both very much, and it depends on kind of your state of mind, which you may not know right away when you start to practice. When I say I always write as sort of compulsive. I'm a compulsive scheduler. I very often write, let's say, timings for, how much time I want to spend on a particular piece that I'm practicing. But what happens with that time, of course, that could be very exploratory. So it's just it's a way to kind of structure the practice, but then obviously that can change while you're doing something. If you find that you're really on a roll and are really inspired while you're practicing a certain piece, of course. I mean, I'm not married to the, there's no union member who's keeping me on the clock. Let's say, but it's it can be helpful still in organizing yourself, so that you make sure that you get to all aspects that you want to get to. See what I mean?
Oh, yeah, and then we have our last question from Clements, who I think is going to unmute and also speak his question.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to thank you for this Q&A because it was very interesting. And I was wondering, you mentioned it before already a bit, but to which extent you work with contemporary composers changed your approach to old repertoire or to repertoire of composers that aren't alive anymore?
I think in the broader sense, it definitely humanized the composers that I had, that we all deify, I'd say. It's a bit hard to generalize because even between the contemporary music, I have to approach each score so differently, because there's some composers that are so literal and others that are much more free. And so it definitely forced me to be a little bit more detail oriented when I'm looking at the music of dead composers. And also I think a little bit more rigorous in my own practice of them, just because, I mean, when you're approaching a score that's entirely new, that's never been performed before, you approach it with a bit more, say, coming from the building blocks type of mentality. And so I think that seeped into my practice of Dvorak and Brahms and things like that.
Great. Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you to everyone who's asked a question, and yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up around here. So yeah, I'd really like to thank everybody who's watched with us at home, and obviously a massive thank you to Alisa for joining us for this time and offering her her insights on balance and perspective. Have a lovely rest of the evening or rest of the day in your case. And
thank you so much.
No worries. I'm not sure what happens now. We're gonna go off the live stream and